It all started innocently enough, you know? Like, one of those things where you're not really paying attention because it's such a small thing. I didn't even realize when she started helping. In fact, I thought it was kinda cute at first, how she'd randomly bring me coffee or offer to do little favors. We've all been there, right? That person in your life who goes the extra mile, and you're like, wow, that's super sweet. Her name was Jess. We met through a mutual friend, Tom, during one of those casual Friday night hangs. She seemed pretty chill, outgoing, with this carefree vibe that made you think she was the kind of person who'd bail you out of trouble at 2 a.m. without hesitation. We hit it off almost immediately, started hanging out more, texting, you know the deal. At first, her helping seemed like small acts of kindness. I'm not gonna lie, there were moments I appreciated it. I work a demanding job, and sometimes life just hits you like a truck. So when she started sending me reminders like, don't forget about your doctor's appointment tomorrow, or hey, I grabbed you some groceries since you mentioned you were too tired to go, I wasn't about to complain. If anything, I thought, damn, I could use a friend like this. But then, it started to shift. I don't even know when it exactly changed. It was like, 1 minute, she's this cool, helpful friend, and the next, she's got this weirdly intense energy. I brushed it off, because, well, I didn't want to seem ungrateful or anything. But when I say intense, I mean, she went from helping to, like, controlling. It started small. I remember once I told her about this date I was going on, and out of nowhere, she started critiquing the girl. Are you sure she's right for you? I mean, she doesn't seem like your type. I hadn't even gone on the date yet. At first, I thought she was just being protective, like maybe she knew something I didn't. But when she started giving me advice on how I should dress, or I should take the girl, and even how I should act, it fell off. And the date? Total disaster, by the way. It was like I was living Jess's idea of how a date should go, not mine. I was so caught up in what she'd suggested that I wasn't even being myself. Needless to say, there wasn't a second date. I laughed it off to Jess, thinking she'd drop it. Instead, she said, see? I told you she wasn't right for you. Don't worry, I'll help you next time. I should have noped out of that situation right then, but nah, I stayed, telling myself she meant well. But it got worse. I started noticing that she wasn't just giving advice, she was keeping tabs on everything. Like, literally everything. My texts, my emails, my work schedule. She'd text me, hey, why didn't you reply to that email from your boss, or I saw you were online last night but didn't message me back, everything okay? Look, I get it. People check in, and we all have that friend who maybe crosses a boundary here and there, but this felt different. Jess wasn't just checking in, she was monitoring. And it was creepy. I tried to distance myself, but every time I pulled back, she'd find a way to reel me back in, usually by playing the I'm just helping you card. It wasn't long before my friends started noticing too. Tom, the dude who introduced us, was like, bro, are you okay? Jess is kinda everywhere. I shrugged it off, not wanting to seem paranoid. But deep down, I knew he was right. Jess was everywhere. She was in my head, in my life, in my decisions. And the craziest part? She genuinely thought she was helping. One night, I finally snapped. It had been a long day at work, and I just wanted to crash. Jess, of course, had other plans. She called me, asking about some minor thing I had completely forgotten about. I made the mistake of saying I was too tired to talk, and suddenly, she was outside my apartment, knocking on my door. Just let me in, I'll help you relax, she said, her voice muffled through the door. I stood there, staring at the door, trying to figure out how the hell I got here. I don't know what it was, but something in me froze. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was the constant push-pull of Jess's help that I hadn't realized was suffocating me until that very moment. But standing there, staring at my door while she knocked like she had some divine right to be inside, I just couldn't. I didn't open the door. I didn't say anything. I stood there, still as a statue, hoping she'd get the hint. After a few minutes of knocking, she finally stopped. I heard her sigh through the door, followed by a soft, I was just trying to help. That one sentence hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't even the words, it was the tone. That guilt-laced disappointment, like I was the one messing up for not letting her fix my life. It was quiet for a while after that. No more knocking. No texts. No calls. I actually thought she might have left. That's when I heard my phone buzz. "I know you're in there. Just talk to me." Dude. That text gave me chills. The way she knew I was inside without me saying a word? Yeah, that was next level creepy. I ignored it. I couldn't deal with her at that moment. For the next half hour, I sat on my couch, phone buzzing every few minutes with her messages. I didn't check any of them, but I saw the previews pop up. "You're not being fair. I'm only trying to help. Why are you avoiding me? You've changed." The thing is, I knew she wasn't going to stop. Jess wasn't the type to just let things go. It was like she had this obsession with being in control of the situation, and when she wasn't, she'd spiral. Eventually, I got up, peeked through the blinds, and saw her sitting in her car, parked right outside my apartment. The engine was off, but the headlights were still on, casting this eerie glow through the windows. She was just sitting there. Waiting. Watching. That's when I realized this wasn't normal. This wasn't a friend being overly concerned. This was something else. Something darker. It's like she had this need to be involved in every single part of my life, and when she couldn't, she didn't know how to handle it. After a while, she left. I don't know how long she sat out there, but when I finally went to bed, I saw her car pull away from the curb. I thought maybe that was it. Maybe she'd finally gotten the message. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of missed texts. A few were from my coworkers, asking if I was okay, but most were from Jess. At some point during the night, she'd switched from trying to talk to me to messaging my friends and family, asking them if they'd heard from me, if I was okay, if something had happened to me. She even sent some vague message to my mom, which freaked her out enough to call me first thing in the morning. "What's going on? Who is this girl? Is everything all right?" That was the last straw. It was one thing to insert herself into my daily life, but reaching out to my mom? That was a level of invasion I couldn't tolerate. I called Jess, and when she answered, it was like nothing had happened. "Oh hey. I was just about to call you. I was really worried about you last night." "Worried about me? You were camped outside my place for hours." Her tone shifted, like she didn't understand what I was upset about. "I was just making sure you were okay. You seemed off yesterday, and I didn't want to leave you alone if something was wrong." "Jess, I'm fine. I just needed some space." She went quiet for a moment, and I could feel the tension through the phone. "Space? From me?" "Yeah, from everything. It's been overwhelming lately." I expected her to get it, to finally realize that her help was doing more harm than good. But instead, she got defensive. "Overwhelming? What part of me helping you is overwhelming? I've been nothing but supportive." "Jess, you messaged my mom." "I was just concerned. No one else seemed to care." "Jess, I'm telling you to back off." Her silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. I wasn't sure what she'd say next, but I could feel the conversation reaching a breaking point. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm, but with that same undercurrent of passive-aggressive guilt-tripping. "I get it. You're upset. But you're going to see that I'm the only one who really has your back. I'm just trying to make sure you're okay. You'll thank me later." And just like that, she hung up. I wish I could say that was the end of it. That I laid down the boundary, and she respected it. But that's not how this kind of thing works, does it? People like Jess don't stop just because you tell them to. They find new ways to sneak back into your life, and before you know it, they're right there, in your head again. That night, I checked my phone one last time before going to bed, hoping for some kind of resolution or at least a break from the chaos. Instead, I found a new message from an unknown number. The text was simple. You can't ignore me forever. My stomach dropped. That text from the unknown number was like a punch to the gut. I knew it was Jess. Who else would send something like that? She was too deep in this whole mess to back off now. I didn't even respond. What was I gonna say? The worst part? That sinking feeling in my stomach didn't go away. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. My boss, Linda, even pulled me aside and asked if everything was all right. I told her it was just personal stuff, nothing to worry about, but the truth was, Jess was everywhere, even when she wasn't physically around. I started catching myself checking my phone every few minutes, half expecting another barrage of texts or, worse, a surprise visit at my office. Around lunchtime, I got another text. This one was from Jess's actual number. I was thinking, we should talk. There's a lot we need to clear up. I'll come by your place later. My heart started racing. She didn't ask if she could come by, she just said she would. Like it wasn't even a question anymore. Jess had completely skipped over normal social boundaries. I needed to stop this. I needed to figure out how to make her understand that this wasn't okay. I thought about just blocking her, but it didn't feel that simple. Jess knew too much about me, knew where I lived, my routine, and even my family. Blocking her would only escalate things, right? And the last thing I needed was her showing up again unannounced or worse, pulling some dramatic stunt. I took a deep breath and texted back, "We need space. Please don't come by." No reply. 4 hours. Just radio silence. That weird, tense anticipation lingered, and I couldn't tell if it was a good sign or if I had just poured gasoline on the fire. When I finally got home after work, it felt like I was waiting for a storm to hit. By 9 p.m., I started to relax a little. No calls, no texts, no unexpected knocks on the door. Maybe, just maybe, she had actually listened. Of course, I should have known better. Around 10:30, my phone buzzed. It wasn't a message this time. It was a photo. I opened it, and instantly, my stomach flipped. It was a picture of my apartment building, taken from across the street. WTF, I muttered to myself. This was next-level disturbing. The photo wasn't old either, Jess had sent it literally a minute after it was taken. She was there, watching me, waiting for me to react. Before I could do anything, my phone buzzed again. "You said you didn't want me to come by, so I'm respecting your boundaries. I'm just checking up on you from a distance." At that point, I realized I couldn't handle this on my own anymore. Jess wasn't just being overly helpful anymore. This was turning into something more dangerous, something I wasn't equipped to deal with. I texted my friend Tom, remember him? The one who introduced us, and told him everything. He knew Jess better than anyone, and I hoped he'd have some insight into what I should do. He called me immediately. "Dude, what the hell is going on?" "I don't know, man. She's losing it. She's outside my apartment right now. What do I do?" Tom paused for a moment, then sighed. "Okay, first of all, don't panic. I've known Jess for years, and yeah, she's intense, but this is something else." "Are you sure it's her outside?" I'm staring at the picture she just sent. "It's my building. It's her." He let out a low whistle. "All right. Listen, you need to set a firm boundary with her. No more of this I need space stuff. You've got to tell her to stop contacting you. Period. If she doesn't, we'll figure out what to do next." "Like what? A restraining order?" I half laughed, but it wasn't a joke. Tom didn't laugh. "If it comes to that, yeah. But let's see if she backs off first." We talked for a while longer, mostly about how crazy it was that things had escalated this fast. Jess had always been a little extra, but this? This was way beyond anything either of us could have predicted. After we hung up, I sat there, staring at my phone. I knew Tom was right. I had to be firm. So I drafted one last message to Jess. "This has gone too far. You need to stop contacting me, stop showing up, and stop trying to be involved in my life. I'm serious. If you don't, I'll have to take legal action." My thumb hovered over the send button for a long time, but finally, I hit send. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for her response. The reply came almost immediately. "I'm sorry you feel that way. I just care about you, but if you don't want my help, I'll back off. Just remember, no one else is going to be there for you like I am." I didn't respond. What was there to say? For the next couple of days, things were quiet. Jess didn't text, didn't show up, didn't send weird photos from outside my apartment. It was almost like she had vanished. I didn't want to jinx it, but it felt like maybe, just maybe, she'd finally gotten the message. But, of course, that's not how these things go, is it? Because a few days later, I got another text. This one wasn't from Jess. It was from an unknown number. The message was short but enough to send my anxiety into overdrive. "You really think you can ignore me forever? I told you, I'm the only one who really cares about you." And that's when I knew Jess wasn't done. Not by a long shot. That text hit me like a ton of bricks. Just when I thought maybe Jess had backed off, here she was again, slipping back into my life with that eerie persistence. The unknown number this time confirmed what I had suspected: blocking her wasn't going to solve this. Jess was determined to keep some kind of control, and she wasn't going to let go easily. I didn't respond. I didn't even know what to say. And honestly, I was starting to get scared. The whole situation was spiraling into something way more messed up than I ever imagined. The next few days were quiet again, but that kind of silence only made me more anxious. It felt like I was just waiting for the next thing to happen. Every time my phone buzzed, I tensed up, half expecting it to be Jess. But, no texts, no calls, nothing. I even tried to go back to my normal routine, hang out with friends, get lost in work, anything to distract myself. And then, on Friday night, it all blew up again. I had plans with Tom and a couple of other friends. We were just gonna grab some drinks, nothing crazy. I hadn't told anyone except Tom about the Jess situation, mostly because I didn't want it to be a whole thing. But as we were sitting there at the bar, just catching up, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. Like, maybe my brain was playing tricks on me because Jess had been occupying so much of my thoughts lately. But no. I looked again, and there she was. Jess. Sitting at a table across the bar, just casually sipping on a drink, acting like she didn't know exactly what she was doing. And worse? She wasn't alone. Tom noticed the look on my face and turned to see what I was staring at. His eyes widened when he saw Jess. "What the hell?" he muttered. I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing. I mean, what were the odds that she'd just randomly show up at the same bar? There's no way it was a coincidence, right? Tom leaned in. "Dude, did you tell her we were going out tonight?" "No. Of course not. I haven't talked to her since that last text." He shook his head, clearly just as freaked out as I was. "She's crossing the line. This is messed up." I nodded, feeling the weight of the situation. We tried to ignore her, but it was impossible. Jess kept glancing over at our table, not even bothering to hide the fact that she was watching us. And the guy she was with? He seemed clueless, just chatting away like everything was normal. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. By the end of the night, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to confront her. I didn't want to cause a scene, but I also couldn't let her keep getting away with this. So, as we were getting ready to leave, I walked over to her table. "Jess," I said, keeping my voice low, "what are you doing here?" She looked up at me with this innocent, almost confused expression. "What do you mean?" "I'm just having a drink with a friend." "What's the big deal?" I clenched my jaw, trying to keep calm. "You know exactly what the big deal is. You've been following me. Showing up unannounced. Sending weird texts. This isn't normal." She sighed, rolling her eyes like I was overreacting. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just out for the night. Can't a girl have some fun? Jess, stop. This isn't about fun. You're stalking me. Her expression shifted, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flash of something dark in her eyes. But just as quickly, she smiled. You're being dramatic. I'm not stalking you. I just care about you, that's all. Maybe you're just not used to someone actually giving a damn. That last sentence hit me hard. It was like she was twisting the whole thing to make me feel guilty, like I was the one being unreasonable for not appreciating her care. I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. I just wanted her out of my life. Jess, I'm serious. This has to stop. I've asked you nicely. I've given you space. But if this keeps happening, I'm going to have to take legal action. Her smile faltered for a second, but then she quickly recovered. Legal action? Really? You'd go that far? If you don't stop, yeah. I don't want to, but you're giving me no choice. She stared at me for a long moment, and for the first time, I saw something crack in her facade. She wasn't just annoyed or dismissive anymore, there was real anger behind her eyes. Fine, she finally said, her voice cold. If that's how you want to play it, go ahead. But don't think for a second that you'll be better off without me. You'll see. With that, she grabbed her drink, stood up, and walked out of the bar, leaving her friend behind, who looked completely confused. I stood there, trying to process what had just happened. Tom walked over, clapping me on the shoulder. You good, man? I nodded, but I wasn't sure. Something about the way Jess had spoken, that final warning she gave me, it stuck with me. I had no idea what she meant by you'll see, but it didn't feel like an empty threat. We left the bar, and I went home, still replaying the whole confrontation in my head. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't shake that uneasy feeling. It was like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And sure enough, the next morning, I woke up to chaos. My phone was blowing up with notifications. Texts, emails, even Facebook messages. All from random people I didn't know, all asking me about Jess. Apparently, overnight, she had gone on some kind of social media spree, posting long rants about me, about how I had abandoned her, how I was ungrateful, how she had done everything for me and I had thrown her away like trash. She painted me as the bad guy, and she did it publicly. It was a nightmare. Waking up to that flood of messages was like stepping into a bad dream. My notifications were blowing up, texts, DMs, and tagged posts from people I didn't even know, all connected to Jess's social media meltdown. She had gone full nuclear, airing out everything she could think of, twisting it to make me look like some sort of villain. She framed herself as the victim, claiming that all she ever did was help me, that I was the one who had taken advantage of her kindness, and when I didn't need her anymore, I just tossed her aside. She wrote long, emotional posts, saying she had been there for me when no one else was, that she had sacrificed so much for me, and now I was trying to cut her out of my life. The worst part? People believed her. I scrolled through the comments, and there it was, hundreds of random people jumping on her bandwagon, saying how awful I was, how I didn't deserve someone as loyal as Jess. They were calling me a narcissist, a user, a manipulator, based on her side of the story alone. She had even tagged me in some of the posts, so of course, all of her followers flooded my accounts with hate. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications. Tom called me not long after I saw the posts. Dude, have you seen this? Yeah, I sighed, I'm looking at it right now. She's lost it. Completely. She's making you out to be some kind of monster. I know. And now everyone else is too. Tom was quiet for a moment. You've got to do something about this. You can't just let her trash you like that. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache coming on. What am I supposed to do? If I respond, it'll just add fuel to the fire. I don't know, but we can't let her control the narrative like this. You need to talk to someone, maybe even a lawyer. The thought of getting legal help felt extreme, but at this point, I didn't see any other option. Jess wasn't just ruining my day-to-day life, she was ruining my reputation, turning me into some kind of villain in her twisted story. That's when my phone buzzed again. Another message from Jess. I told you people would see the truth. Maybe now you'll appreciate what you had. But don't worry, I'm not done yet. There's more to come. I stared at the message, feeling a chill run down my spine. Not done yet? What else could she possibly have in store for me? I blocked her number. It wasn't going to stop her from spreading lies, but at least I wouldn't have to see her messages pop up every few hours, reminding me that she was still lurking in the background, plotting her next move. That whole day was a blur of stress. I barely left my apartment, too afraid of what might happen next. I kept getting notifications, seeing my name dragged through the mud online. Jess had even started reaching out to mutual friends, people we hadn't spoken to in months, trying to pull them into her web of lies. She was going full scorched earth, making sure everyone knew her version of events. Later that evening, I decided to take Tom's advice and reached out to a lawyer. I found someone who specialized in harassment and defamation cases, and we set up a meeting for the next day. It felt like my only option now was to get legal protection, to finally draw a line that Jess couldn't cross. But Jess wasn't done yet. That night, I got an email. It was from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in a while, one of the people Jess had reached out to. He forwarded me a screenshot of the message she had sent him. In the message, Jess had shared private details about me, stuff I had told her in confidence when we were friends, things no one else knew. And she wasn't just gossiping, she was weaponizing it. She made it sound like I had all these deep, dark secrets, using them to make me look like a horrible person. It was like she was trying to destroy my entire life, piece by piece. My friend, at least, had the decency to check in with me before believing anything she said. Hey man, Jess sent me this. I don't know what's going on, but it seems pretty messed up. Just wanted to give you a heads up. I thanked him, but I felt sick to my stomach. Jess was taking things to a whole new level. She wasn't just ruining my reputation publicly, she was going after my private life now, using the trust one had once had in her against me. That's when I knew for sure this wasn't going to stop on its own. The next morning, I met with the lawyer. We talked through everything: Jess's messages, her social media posts, her behavior over the last few weeks. The lawyer was calm, but I could tell even she was taken aback by the level of obsession Jess had shown. You've got a strong case here, she said. Between the harassment, the defamation, and the invasion of privacy, we can definitely file for a restraining order and start building a defamation case. I nodded, feeling a small sense of relief for the first time in days. Finally, someone who could help me. But even as we discussed legal strategies, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Jess wasn't the type to back down easily, and I had no idea how far she'd go to keep this twisted hold over my life. The lawyer helped me draft a cease and desist letter, which would be the first step in formally warning Jess to stop her behavior. If she didn't, we'd move forward with the restraining order and legal action. It was a long road ahead, but at least I wasn't alone in it anymore. I left the lawyer's office feeling a little more in control, but also exhausted. The whole thing had taken a toll on me, mentally and emotionally. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt truly relaxed, without the constant fear of Jess looming over me. That night, I sent Jess the cease and desist letter via email. It was short, direct, and to the point, essentially telling her that if she didn't stop her harassment and defamation immediately, legal action would follow. For a few hours, it was quiet again. No messages, no posts, no new drama. But then, just before midnight, my phone buzzed with a new email notification. It was from Jess. I opened it, my heart racing, already dreading what I'd find. The subject line said it all. You really think you can silence me? I stared at the email, my heart pounding in my chest. The subject line alone sent a wave of anxiety through me. I knew I should probably wait and consult my lawyer before doing anything, but my curiosity, or maybe it was fear, got the better of me. I clicked on it. Jess's email was long. Too long. It started with the usual manipulation, how much she had done for me, how ungrateful I was, how I didn't deserve her help. But this time, she took it up a notch. She didn't just attack me, she threatened to expose everything. "You can try to shut me up with your legal nonsense," she wrote, "but that won't stop me. You think I don't have more dirt on you? I've been there for you through all your worst moments. I know things about you that no one else does. And I can tell everyone. Don't think for a second that your lawyer can protect you from the truth." The words hit like a gut punch. I knew Jess was unhinged, but I hadn't fully grasped just how far she was willing to go. She had always been the type to collect information on people, under the guise of being a good friend, but I never thought she'd use it like this. Now, it was clear, she was threatening to air out all of my dirty laundry unless I played by her rules. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I forwarded the email to my lawyer with a simple message: "What do I do?" I didn't sleep much that night, tossing and turning, thinking about all the things Jess could expose. It wasn't that I had any major skeletons in my closet, but everyone has things they'd rather not have blasted to the world, right? I had trusted Jess with personal stories, vulnerabilities, things I had never imagined she'd use against me. The next morning, my lawyer got back to me. "This is a clear escalation," she said. "We can use this as further evidence of harassment. Don't respond to her. I'll start drafting the restraining order today." I nodded along as I read her email, feeling both relieved and terrified. A restraining order seemed like the only way to get Jess to stop, but part of me couldn't shake the fear that once I went down that road, she'd become even more dangerous. She'd already shown she wasn't afraid to go nuclear. The next couple of days were tense. I avoided social media completely, not wanting to see if Jess had posted anything new. I just kept my head down, went to work, and tried to distract myself. But that looming threat, Jess's words echoing in my mind, was always there, hovering over me like a storm cloud. Tom checked in on me a few times. "Any updates on the Jess front?" I sighed. "Yeah. Lawyers drafting a restraining order." But Jess sent this insane email, basically threatening to expose everything she knows about me if I don't play alone. Tom whistled. "Man, she's really lost it. What are you gonna do?" "I don't know. The lawyer says not to respond, so I'm just waiting, I guess." "Just hang in there. This'll blow over. She can't keep this up forever." I wanted to believe Tom, but deep down, I wasn't sure Jess was the type to ever blow over. She thrived on drama. It was like she needed it to survive, and right now, I was her main target. Then, 2 days later, it happened. I was at work when I got a call from a mutual friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in months, maybe even a year. The moment I saw his name pop up on my phone, I knew something was wrong. Why would he be calling out of the blue? I picked up, trying to sound casual. "Hey, man. What's up?" His voice was tense. "Dude, we need to talk. Have you seen what Jess posted?" My stomach dropped. "No. What did she do?" She went off, man. She posted this massive thread on Twitter and Instagram, airing out all kinds of stuff about you. Some of it's personal. Like, really personal. I felt my heart start to race. "What kind of stuff?" "I don't know if I should even repeat it, but she's saying you had some. I don't know, some serious mental health issues? And that you were using her for emotional support or something. She made it sound like you were a wreck and she was the only one holding you together." My blood ran cold. I could feel my hands shaking. "Are you serious?" "Yeah. And people are eating it up. She's getting all this sympathy. Everyone's calling her a hero for putting up with you. It's insane." I didn't even know what to say. Jess had gone public with my deepest vulnerabilities, twisting them into a narrative that made her look like some kind of martyr. And worse, people were believing it. "Thanks for telling me," I managed to mutter. I'll figure it out." After we hung up, I sat there, staring blankly at my computer screen. I felt exposed, like Jess had ripped open my life for everyone to see. How was I supposed to come back from this? It's one thing to have a private conflict, but when someone starts broadcasting your personal life to the world, it feels like there's no way to defend yourself without looking guilty. I called my lawyer again, explaining the latest development. She listened patiently, and when I was done, she sighed. "We'll include this in the restraining order request." Defamation is a tricky area, but her behavior is escalating into clear harassment. "We'll need to act fast before she does any more damage." I agreed, but in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was already too late. Jess had successfully painted me as the bad guy, and the more I tried to fight back, the more it seemed like I was proving her right. That night, I couldn't stop myself from looking at her posts. I scrolled through the long, self-pitying thread on Instagram. It was full of photos of us, photos I didn't even know she had taken, alongside long captions detailing how much she had sacrificed for me. And there, in the middle of it all, were the personal stories I had once trusted her with, now twisted into some bizarre narrative where I was the villain and she was the hero. The comments were even worse. Strangers, people who didn't know me at all, were praising her for her strength, calling me all kinds of names. Narcissist. Manipulator. Abuser. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, and I couldn't look away. I knew I couldn't fix this online. I wasn't going to win a social media battle with Jess. But that didn't stop me from feeling powerless. The next morning, I met with my lawyer again. She was calm, professional, and confident that we had enough to file the restraining order. I nodded along, but I couldn't help feeling like even if we got it, Jess wouldn't stop. She'd find another way to come at me. She always did. By the time I left her office, I had signed the necessary paperwork, and the ball was officially rolling. A part of me felt relieved, but another part of me couldn't shake the dread. Jess was unpredictable, and if there's one thing I had learned, it's that she wasn't going to go down quietly. Sure enough, that night, I got another email. "You think a restraining order is going to stop me? You really don't understand how much I care about you. I'm not going anywhere. Not until you realize I'm the only one who actually gives a damn about you." The email rattled me. Jess's words were unhinged, like a mix of obsession and anger that I couldn't reason with. It was a threat disguised as care, and it chilled me to my core. I forwarded the email to my lawyer, trying to keep my hands from shaking. For the rest of the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jess was lurking in every corner of my life. I felt like I was being watched even in my own apartment. I double-checked the locks on my door, pulled the blinds, and tried to focus on anything other than the mess she was creating around me. But no matter how much I tried to distract myself, that lingering fear remained. The next day, I got a text from my lawyer. She had filed the restraining order, and Jess would be served within the next few days. She assured me that once Jess received the order, it would make her behavior illegal. If she contacted me again, I could press charges. But I wasn't so sure this would stop her. Jess didn't seem like the type to back down just because of a piece of paper. That evening, I decided to reach out to a couple of friends, ones Jess hadn't poisoned against me yet. I needed to explain the situation before they got swept up in her lies too. I met up with my friend Mike at a coffee shop, and we sat down at a table in the corner, away from prying ears. "So," Mike said after taking a sip of his coffee, "what the hell is going on with Jess?" I sighed. "It's a long story, but basically, she's been stalking me. Harassing me. She's been posting all this stuff online, making me out to be the bad guy." Mike raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, I saw some of her posts. She's saying some pretty wild stuff, man." "I know. And it's not true." "Well, some of it's based on half-truths, but she's twisting everything to make me look like a complete monster." Mike nodded slowly. "I figured. It didn't seem like you. I've known you for years, you're not the guy she's describing." "Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. So, what are you gonna do? You can't just let her keep slandering you like this." I got a lawyer. We filed for a restraining order, and it should be served soon. Hopefully, that'll stop her. Mike shook his head. "I don't know, man. She seems pretty obsessed." You think she's just gonna back off because of a restraining order? That's what I'm afraid of, I admitted. But it's all I can do right now. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of the situation hanging between us. It felt good to at least have someone on my side, someone who knew me well enough to see through Jess's lies. But the fact that I had to even have this conversation, that Jess had forced me into this situation, was exhausting. As I was heading home later that night, my phone buzzed again. For a split second, my heart jumped into my throat, thinking it was another message from Jess. But when I checked, it was an unknown number. The message was simple: check your car. I froze. My car was parked just around the corner, but the fact that someone, probably Jess, was telling me to look at it was enough to send a wave of dread through me. I debated whether I should even go look, or if I should just call the police. But I knew I couldn't ignore it. I walked quickly to where my car was parked, the night air feeling colder than it should have. As I approached my car, I immediately noticed something was off. The driver's side window was smashed. My heart sank. I rushed over to inspect the damage, and sure enough, the car had been broken into. Glass littered the seat, and my glove compartment was open, with papers and belongings scattered all over. The first thought that crossed my mind was, this is Jess. This had her name written all over it. Who else would send me a cryptic message like that, just to mess with my head? I called the police, and they arrived about 20 minutes later. I explained the situation to the officer, trying not to let my frustration boil over. The officer was sympathetic, but it was clear there wasn't much they could do beyond taking a report. Without concrete proof that Jess had done it, they couldn't charge her with anything. As I stood there, watching the officer fill out the report, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Jess was escalating, and fast. She had gone from harassing me online to invading my real life, breaking into my personal space. What would she do next? The officer handed me the report and advised me to install some cameras or alarms around my place and my car. We'll do what we can, but you might want to beef up your security. I nodded, but I felt helpless. Cameras and alarms might catch her in the act, but what I really wanted was for her to stop entirely. And no amount of security could guarantee that. The next morning, I updated my lawyer on what had happened. She agreed that this was a clear violation, but we still didn't have proof that Jess was the one behind the break-in. If we can link this to her in any way, we can push forward with criminal charges, my lawyer said. For now, just document everything. And stay safe. I spent the next couple of days feeling paranoid, constantly looking over my shoulder, checking my phone, and wondering if Jess was watching me. Every noise outside my apartment made me jump, every unexpected message made my heart race. I even considered leaving town for a while, just to get some distance from her. But I knew that running wouldn't solve anything. Then, a few days later, the restraining order was finally served. I got an email from my lawyer confirming that Jess had been officially notified. Part of me hoped that this would finally be the end of it, that maybe Jess would see the seriousness of the situation and back off. But I wasn't holding my breath. That night, I got another email from Jess. You really thought this would stop me? Pathetic. I told you I'm not going anywhere. And now you've made it worse. You'll regret this. The cold, detached tone in her words sent a shiver down my spine. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I forwarded the email to my lawyer immediately, knowing that this would only help build my case. But as I lay in bed that night, staring up at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in deeper than I had ever anticipated. Jess wasn't just trying to ruin my reputation. She was trying to ruin me. After that email from Jess, I knew I had crossed some invisible line with her. The restraining order wasn't just a legal hurdle for her, it was a personal affront. And the way she phrased it, "You'll regret this," wasn't just a petty jab, it was a promise. I spent the next couple of days bracing for whatever her next move might be. Jess was quiet, too quiet, and that worried me even more. I tried to keep my life as normal as possible, going to work, hanging out with friends, the few who hadn't been swayed by Jess's manipulation, but there was always this gnawing sense of anxiety in the back of my mind. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every knock on the door made my heart race. Jess had gotten under my skin, and I hated it. Then one night, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but for some reason, I answered this time. Hello? There was a pause, then a voice I recognized instantly. You thought you could just erase me from your life like that? Jess's voice was cold, calculated, like she was enjoying this twisted game. Jess, don't call me. This is harassment. I'll report it to the police. My voice was shaking, but I was trying to stay calm. You really think a restraining order scares me? You have no idea what I'm capable of. Her words were venomous. I could almost picture the smug look on her face. What do you want, Jess? I asked, frustrated. What I want? I just want you to remember one thing, I'm the only person who ever cared about you. You'll see that soon enough. And when you do, don't come crawling back to me. It'll be too late. Before I could respond, she hung up. I sat there for a moment, staring at my phone, completely stunned. The thing was, as insane as she sounded, there was something about her voice that made me believe she meant every word. She was delusional, but she truly thought she was justified in what she was doing. I immediately called my lawyer, explaining the situation. She just called me. She's still threatening me. My lawyer sighed. Okay. We can file a report with the police for violating the restraining order, but it's going to take time for them to act. You need to stay vigilant. I wasn't satisfied with stay vigilant. I wanted this nightmare to end. But the system moved slowly, and Jess knew that. She was playing a game where she could keep pushing and pushing until someone finally stepped in to stop her, and she was banking on the fact that I'd break before then. The next day, I installed security cameras around my apartment. I had been meaning to do it since the break-in, but the call from Jess had pushed me to take action. I needed anything, to make me feel like I had some control over the situation. Days passed, and I tried to convince myself that Jess had finally crossed the line. That maybe, after violating the restraining order, the police would take it seriously. But there was no immediate response, no sudden intervention. Instead, it felt like I was stuck in limbo, waiting for Jess to make her next move. Then, one evening, while I was watching TV, my phone buzzed. This time, it was a notification from one of my security cameras. I opened the app, expecting to see some neighborhood cat wandering around, but what I saw made my blood run cold. There, standing outside my apartment building, was Jess. She was just standing there, looking directly at the camera, almost like she knew I'd be watching. She wasn't doing anything, just staring up at my window, her face illuminated by the streetlight. I watched, frozen, as she stood there for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, she smiled, a cold, sinister smile that sent a chill down my spine. After a few more seconds, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. I called the police immediately, explaining that Jess had shown up outside my apartment in violation of the restraining order. They said they'd send someone to patrol the area, but by the time they arrived, Jess was long gone. That night, I barely slept. Every creak, every gust of wind felt like Jess was outside, watching, waiting. I felt trapped in my own home, unable to escape her shadow. The next day, I showed the footage to my lawyer, who assured me this would strengthen our case, but it still felt like we were moving at a snail's pace. Jess wasn't just harassing me anymore, she was stalking me, and every day she went unchecked, my fear grew. I started carrying my phone with me everywhere, ready to call the police at a moment's notice. I even changed my route to work, taking different streets, trying to throw Jess off in case she was following me. But no matter what I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was always one step ahead. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I received another message. This time, it wasn't a text or an email. It was a letter, slipped under my door. My heart raced as I picked it up. The envelope had no return address, but I didn't need one to know who it was from. I hesitated before opening it, but curiosity and fear got the best of me. The letter was handwritten, and as soon as I saw Jess's familiar handwriting, my stomach turned. You can try to hide. You can try to run. But you'll never be free of me. I'm the only one who ever really knew you, and deep down, you know I'm right. No one else will ever care about you the way I did. You can get as many lawyers or cops involved as you want, but they can't protect you from the truth. I'll always be here. Watching. Waiting. And one day, you'll realize you were wrong to ever push me away. I dropped the letter like it was on fire. Jess wasn't just trying to mess with my life anymore, she was making it clear that she wasn't going to stop until I was completely broken. I called my lawyer again, barely able to keep my voice steady. She left a letter at my place. She's still watching me. My lawyer's tone was serious. We'll report this to the police immediately. It's time to escalate this. But as I hung up the phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter what we did, Jess was always going to find a way to worm her way back into my life. The restraining order, the police, the lawyers, it all felt like putting a band-aid on a bullet wound. I knew, deep down, that Jess wasn't going to stop until something drastic happened. The days after the letter felt like living in a nightmare that wouldn't end. Jess had proven she wasn't going to let go easily. Everywhere I went, I felt her presence, even when she wasn't physically there. It was like a shadow constantly looming over me, suffocating and unshakable. I spent a lot of time with my lawyer, trying to build as strong a case as possible, but I still felt vulnerable. The police took the letter seriously this time, but without Jess being caught in the act, they couldn't do much more than continue to patrol the area and advise me to stay safe. It felt like they were waiting for something worse to happen before they'd take any real action, and that terrified me. One evening, after a particularly rough day, I decided to grab a drink with Mike again. I needed to vent, to get out of my head for a bit. I told him about the letter, the security footage, everything Jess had been doing to keep me on edge. "This is seriously messed up, man," Mike said, shaking his head. "How is she still getting away with all of this?" "Because she knows how to walk the line. She's not stupid. Jess knows how far she can go without getting herself into real trouble." Mike sighed, taking a sip of his beer. "You can't just keep living like this, though. It's not sustainable." "I know," I said, my voice low. "But what choice do I have? It's like, she's everywhere. No matter what I do, she's always there." Mike leaned in, his expression serious. "What if you left? Like, really left? Got out of town for a while, at least until the police can actually do something about her." I hadn't seriously considered running before, but now, the idea didn't seem so crazy. "You mean just leave everything behind? Why not? You've got your job, your life, but none of that's gonna matter if Jess keeps escalating. Maybe if you get some distance, she'll back off, realize she can't control you anymore." I mulled it over for the rest of the night. Could I really just pack up and leave? It felt like giving Jess the victory she wanted, but at the same time, Mike was right. This wasn't sustainable. Jess was unraveling, and I didn't want to stick around to find out how far she'd go. That night, after I got home, I seriously considered it. I even started looking at places I could go, somewhere far enough away where Jess wouldn't easily follow. But as I was scrolling through options, my phone buzzed again. Another email notification. It was from Jess. "Leaving town, are we? Thought I wouldn't notice? You can't hide from me. I'll always know where you are." My blood ran cold. How could she possibly know what I was thinking? I hadn't told anyone except Mike, and I hadn't made any moves to actually leave yet. Was she hacking into my accounts? Watching me through my devices? At this point, nothing felt too far-fetched. Panic set in. I shut down my laptop, grabbed my phone, and turned off every device I could think of. I felt exposed, like Jess had managed to invade not just my physical life but my digital one too. She was everywhere, inescapable. I called Mike immediately, telling him what had happened. "Dude, she just emailed me. She knows I'm thinking about leaving." "What? How could she know that?" "I don't know, man. Maybe she's been hacking my stuff or something. I don't know anymore." Mike was silent for a moment, then he said, "Okay, listen. Come stay at my place for a while. We'll figure this out. But you can't stay at your apartment. It's not safe. I packed a bag and headed over to Mike's place, still feeling paranoid that Jess was somehow tracking me, watching my every move. But once I was at Mike's, I felt a little safer, like I had some breathing room for the first time in days. For the next few days, I stayed at Mike's, barely leaving his apartment. I kept in touch with my lawyer and the police, but things weren't moving fast enough for my liking. Jess was still out there, and she wasn't letting up. Then, one night, everything came to a head. I was lying on the couch at Mike's place, trying to unwind with some mindless TV, when I got another security alert on my phone. My stomach dropped. I opened the app and, once again, there was Jess. She was standing outside my apartment building, just like before, staring directly at the camera. But this time, she didn't just stand there. She walked up to my door. I watched in horror as she pulled something out of her bag, a crowbar. She started prying at the lock. I immediately called the police, shouting into the phone that someone was breaking into my apartment. But before they could even respond, I saw her get the door open. Jess disappeared inside. I was shaking, my heart racing. I knew I wasn't there, but just seeing her break into my home felt like a violation beyond anything she had done before. This was it. She had finally crossed the line. The police arrived not long after, and I could see them on the security feed, entering the building. Jess was arrested on the spot for breaking and entering, along with violating the restraining order. She was taken away in handcuffs, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. The next few weeks were a blur of court dates and legal proceedings. Jess was charged with multiple offenses, and my lawyer assured me that this time, she wouldn't be able to wriggle her way out of it. The evidence was undeniable. In the end, Jess was sentenced to time in a psychiatric facility for a thorough evaluation, which wasn't exactly the resolution I had hoped for, but it was something. She was finally out of my life, or at least removed from it for the foreseeable future. After everything was said and done, I moved out of my apartment. I couldn't stay there anymore, not with all the memories of what Jess had put me through. I needed a fresh start, somewhere she couldn't reach me. The relief was overwhelming, but there was still this lingering sense of unease, like Jess had left a permanent scar on my life. I couldn't trust people the same way anymore, always looking over my shoulder, wondering if someone else would try to help me the way she had. But at least, for now, I was free.